now let's talk about saying no to my app.
Yeah.
Is there a moment when turning down funding is the more responsible choice? And if so, how can filmmakers recognize that moment without romanticizing it?
I'm so glad you asked this. I work with so many emerging filmmakers, and
Hmm.
I think especially when you're like young and hungry, you are so ready to jump at every chance. A lot of the filmmakers I work with, it's like
Oh
the
yeah.
first offer that comes in the door, they're
Oh
like
yeah.
salivating over it. And I get that. Of
Yeah.
course, you want to make this thing happen. You've dedicated your life to it. But just like they sometimes say, a director producer relationship is like a marriage. You're going to be with this person for years. The same can be true of financiers. So I think that
Yes.
or financial partners, whatever they look like. So I think you want to be like really careful because you're going to be with this person on this or this entity on this whole journey. So I really think vetting is important. Like, do you trust them? Do you trust them to not, what we were talking about earlier, to not try to give undue influence to the direction of your project? Have they done this before? Do they know what they're getting into? If they don't, can you educate them and have like a real conversation with them about what it means to get involved with your project and what they can and can't do? Um, if you can't have an open line of communication with a potential funder, if you feel uncomfortable talking to them, like that's a bad sign. Um, and I would reconsider, or just at least make sure they're not the only one. I think that's the other thing
Mm.
is like if you can put together a group of funders, or as we've discussed now a few times, like put together different pieces, then it doesn't sort of give all the leverage to one party who says,
Right.
well, like what you don't want is you're working on this film for 3 years and you're dependent on one person and they, for whatever reason, kind of pull the plug. Like
Yeah.
that would be terrible.
Right. I think what we're talking about is getting filmmakers to treat funding less like a transaction and more like a long-term relationship, right?
Oh,
And then
yeah, you
learning
nailed it.
what the boundaries are necessary for that to work.
Same with your participants, in a way, like you have a
Mm.
relationship with these people who are in your film. And you need to be in communication with them and have a shared understanding of like where you're going with this thing and that you're in it together.
So Liz, as a closer, I'd like to ask, if a doc filmmaker listening today is overwhelmed, underfunded, what's one way they could reframe the funding question that would actually give them agency?
Well, the first thing I would say is if you're feeling overwhelmed and underfunded, you're not alone. And I recommend reaching out to other doc filmmakers, to being part of this community, listening to this podcast, start a doc group in your area. Like, it's really important to commiserate, to share ideas, to share funding sources with other filmmakers. I believe in that so, so strongly.
Mm.
And I think, as I mentioned earlier, do your research. That's really important. Figure out who's funding films like yours. Get in touch. It never hurts to ask. I find people, especially emerging filmmakers, get a little bit overwhelmed or feel kind of icky about the ask, about
Yeah.
pitching, about even taking kind of meetings with potential investors. And, bluntly, I would say you just got to get over that hump. But I think, to your question, a way to reframe it or to think about it is that you are a storyteller. We are storytellers. So if you kind of think of this as another opportunity for storytelling, that I can, pitching my film is really talking about why I'm passionate about it and getting people to understand the story. Every time I talk about a story I'm working on, I actually understand the story better. It's like in having to articulate it, you are getting down to the essence of the film.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I think if you put pitching in or pitching or approaching financiers in that same bucket of like, I'm sharing my passion for this project, that just might help make it feel a little bit more palatable.